Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something pretty fascinating. We're turning our gaze inward, really diving deep into the human brain itself.
Yeah, it's an incredible frontier, isn't it?
It really is. We're going to peer into its, intricate pathways to understand a couple of things. First, how our judgments actually take root.
Mm-hmm.
And second, why those really difficult past experiences, the ones sometimes labeled trauma, can just sort of cling on so tightly.
And the sources we're drawing on today,
Yeah.
they really give us a window into the biological architecture behind that. They help us see the actual physical processes happening, inside our heads, especially when our reactions feel so strongly tied to something from way back.
Exactly. And that's the mission for this deep dive, really. It's about understanding that biological process, seeing how the brain, it's this magnificent organ,
Absolutely.
but it's also fundamentally wired for, let's say, caution first. But here's the really crucial part. The sources really highlight its incredible adaptability.
Yes, that adaptability piece is key.
And that adaptability offers a powerful, a tangible path to actually change how we react to those echoes of the past.
So we'll be unpacking some key concepts today, all drawn from the source material. Things like the brain's inherent protective mechanisms,
Okay.
the role of those well-worn neural pathways,
Mm-hmm.
how this specific dynamic, the source calls perceived imbalance, affects our responses in tough moments.
Perceived imbalance.
Mhm.
Okay, interested to hear more on that.
And finally, the just astonishing power of neuroplasticity, the brain's actual documented ability to physically rewire itself.
Okay, let's jump right in then. The sources describe the brain as sort of this magnificent, but maybe sometimes slightly overly cautious guardian.
That's a good way to put it. It's constantly scanning your environment, predicting potential threats.
Mhm.
Its main job is trying to keep you safe.
Constantly scanning.
That scanning and predicting is absolutely fundamental for survival.
Yeah.
So when you experience something painful or threatening, what
Yeah.
the source refers to broadly as, a difficult or traumatic event,
Yeah.
the brain's immediate primary job is to make sense of it. It tries to categorize it, learn from it, basically, so it can predict and hopefully avoid similar pain down the line.
It's pure survival instinct.
Exactly. Pure survival instinct at play.
And this is where I think the sources get really interesting. This learning process is categorizing.
Mhm.
It forms powerful neural pathways.
That's right.
You can think of them, like the sources suggest, as these deeply grooved trails in the brain, literally carved out by these significant experiences.
And the more intense, or maybe repeated the experience, the deeper
Right.
and more ingrained that trail becomes, like a path you walk every single day.
Right. And within that sort of rapid response system, there's this tiny ancient part of the brain called the amygdala.
Ah, yes, the amygdala. Its job is incredibly simple, really. It just screams, danger!
Okay. Just danger.
Yeah, it does this at the slightest hint, the slightest pattern that resembles something it previously tagged as a threat. It's really not built for nuance or careful thought.
No weighing the options there.
Not at all. It prioritizes immediate safety above everything else, even if the threat is just, a memory being triggered right now in the present.
So the amygdala sees just a faint echo of the past and triggers like a full-blown current alarm.
Precisely.
And this is where I found something particularly insightful in the sources, this idea you mentioned earlier, perceived imbalance. What exactly does the source mean by that? How does that connect to the amygdala sounding the alarm?
Right. That's really a core insight from the source's framework. What's
Mhm.
fascinating is this. When a painful or traumatic event happens, the brain often registers this massive
The
negative,
loss, the pain.
a profound loss,
Yeah.
pain, violation, yeah. But in that moment, crucially,
Yeah.
it doesn't immediately perceive an equal and opposite benefit or support or gain that also came from that exact same event.
Ah, okay, I think I see. So the brain kind of fixates on the overwhelming negative part, almost like only half the picture got processed or stored.
Precisely. It locks onto that bad side. And because the pain or threat was so significant, the brain attaches a really strong emotional charge to that incomplete experience.
And that emotional charge that gets held within those powerful neural pathways you mentioned before.
Exactly right. It's this charge, this stored energy that keeps the memory of the trauma and its associated fear kind of alive and active.
Uh-huh.
And it constantly seeks reinforcement in your present reality. It makes you vigilant, always scanning for similar threats based on that past incomplete picture.
And the sources connect this directly to our everyday judgments, don't they? They say judgments are like these mental echoes of the unintegrated experiences.
Yes, exactly. Mental echoes.
There's that powerful line in the source material about the brain building walls of memory around the past, then wonders why you cannot walk freely into the future. How does that wall building actually happen?
Well, that wall building is those reinforced pathways and that lingering emotional charge.
Yeah.
Our judgments become the projections of that past unbalanced experience onto whatever's happening now.
So we judge a current situation negatively.
Because our brain coded a similar past experience as a threat, and it's just trying to protect us now by, overlaying the past pattern onto the present moment.
Makes sense.
And these pathways, they aren't easily dismantled. They actually get stronger every time we repeat the pattern, react from that fear, or maybe ruminate on the event.
Or even just retell the story.
Yes, or retell the story in a way that reinforces our identity as sort of the victim of that past event. It just digs the groove deeper.
You're essentially walking down that same old fear-based trail every single time, making it deeper and deeper. The sources mention the hippocampus, right? Our memory keeper.
Filing away the details.
And the prefrontal cortex, our logical planner, trying to make sense of it all. But often, that sense-making process can kind of inadvertently reinforce the very judgments that keep us stuck in those old patterns.
It definitely sounds like a cycle it could be hard to break out of. But the sources don't just leave us there, stuck, do they? There's this incredible concept they highlight.
Yes. This capacity for neuroplasticity. The sources really emphasize this part. And it feels like the ultimate good news in all of this, doesn't it? That we're not just stuck with those old pathways forever.
Absolutely. Neuroplasticity is the brain's, astonishing ability to reorganize itself. It forms new neural connections throughout our entire lives. You are fundamentally not condemned to live confined within those old painful pathways.
Precisely. And the core idea presented is that by consciously seeking out the equal and opposite support that the sources talk about.
That other side of the equation.
Exactly. By finding the hidden benefits, the gains, the lessons that also came from those past difficult experiences, you actually begin to dissolve that rigid emotional charge attached to the memory.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand this. It's not about pretending the pain wasn't real or didn't matter.
Not at all.
It's more about the brain's interpretation or helping it see the full picture of what happened.
Yes, that's it exactly. It's about allowing the brain to recode the meaning of the experience. When you consciously find and acknowledge the benefit or support that also came from that event, even if it was unintentional, the old, rigid pathways associated only with the pain and threat start to, soften. And then new, more balanced, more empowering connections can be forged. Connections that incorporate the full reality of the experience.
So this isn't just abstract thinking. This is about giving the brain more information, a more complete picture, so it doesn't automatically default to that old alarm system every time.
Right. It can see the full spectrum of the experience, the whole story, instead of just screaming danger at every single echo.
And when the brain sees that full spectrum, not just the pain, but also maybe the strength you gained or the lesson you learned or even some unexpected support that showed up, it doesn't need to scream danger with the same intensity at every trigger anymore. It learns to respond with maybe wisdom informed by the past rather than just reacting from the past incomplete record.
This all sounds, profound. But how do you actually do this? Does the source offer a concrete starting point? A practical way to tap into this neuroplasticity?
It does, thankfully. The source describes a specific method, a way to consciously work with this capacity for change. It involves a specific exercise it calls the Dragon Trial, rewiring the echo.
The Dragon Trial. Okay, intriguing name. Walk us through how that works.
Okay, so the exercise starts by choosing a past event. And the source is quite specific here. Start with something relatively minor.
Minor. Why minor?
Well, something that still triggers a maybe disproportionately strong negative emotional reaction or judgment, but isn't necessarily a huge life-altering trauma. Think of it as like a small event that still hooks you somehow.
Okay, like maybe a critical comment someone made, or a small failure, or even just a moment of embarrassment.
Exactly those kinds of things. Choosing an event and starting small is key because it's less emotionally overwhelming. It just makes it easier to find that balance initially.
Right. I can imagine for some people, even finding a benefit in any difficult memory might feel incredibly hard at first. Does the source acknowledge that challenge?
Oh, absolutely. The exercise acknowledges the initial difficulty. So the first step, once you have your minor event, is to identify the trigger and reaction.
Okay.
What was the specific event? What thought or judgment immediately pops into your mind when you recall it? And importantly, what physical sensation or emotion do you feel in your body? This is basically identifying that old amygdala alarm bell ringing.
Got it. So really noticing the specific trigger and that automatic physical or emotional response.
Right.
Okay, what's next?
Then you actively seek the opposite. This is the real core of the work here. You consciously, deliberately search for an equal and opposite benefit, support, gain, or lesson that also came from that very same event.
Okay, find the good that came out of the bad, essentially.
Kind of. The source gives examples, like maybe that criticism, yeah, it was painful, but ultimately it made you refine a skill. Or that failure taught you resilience, a better way forward. Or that embarrassing moment led to maybe greater humility or empathy. You deliberately look for the gain alongside the pain.
Searching for the equal and opposite benefit. That feels really counterintuitive to how we usually process painful things, doesn't it? We usually just focus on the hurt. How do the sources suggest approaching that search if it feels, impossible at first?
Yeah, it does take persistence and a definite shift in perspective. You're looking for the objective consequences beyond just the immediate feeling. It might not be something you liked experiencing at all,
Right.
but what happened as a result that was also beneficial, even indirectly. The sources suggest asking questions like, okay, how did this actually help me in the long run? Or what strength did I discover because of this?
Or maybe who or what showed up to support me then that I might not have noticed otherwise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or what valuable lesson did this teach me, even if it was hard won? You're really looking for the complete accounting, the full balance sheet of the event's impact, not just the painful side that the brain initially locked onto.
Okay, so let's say you've wrestled with that, you've put in the effort, and you've identified a genuine benefit or support. What's the next step in this dragon trial?
Okay, once you've identified that benefit, the next step is to visualize the rewiring. This is where you engage your imagination. Take a moment, maybe close your eyes.
Okay.
Imagine that old, rigid neural pathway in your brain, the one linked to the trigger, and that initial negative reaction. Picture it. Then, vividly visualize a new, softer, more flexible pathway forming right alongside it.
Ah, creating a new path.
See, this new pathway connecting the original trigger not just to the old reaction, but also directly to the benefit you just identified. And as you focus on this new pathway, imagine the old one fading slightly, becoming less dominant as the new one strengthens.
Visualizing the pathways. That really brings the abstract idea of neuroplasticity into something, well, tangible you can mentally work with. That feels powerful.
It really is. You're actively engaging your mind in directing that physical process of neuroplasticity. It's quite amazing. Then the final step is to practice the new response.
Right, put it into action.
Exactly. The next time you encounter a similar trigger in your actual life, maybe you receive some criticism or experience a minor setback that echoes the past event. Consciously bring to mind the benefit you identified during the exercise. And just notice. Notice if your brain's automatic reaction, that gut feeling, begins to soften, even just a tiny bit.
And this is where the rubber meets the road for you, the listener, right?
Yeah.
Applying it in real time.
That's where the change happens. This exercise, this dragon trial, it's about consciously and deliberately using your brain's natural capacity to rewire itself. Over time, with practice, you really can create more empowering, more balanced responses to triggers that previously sent you right down that old fear-based pathway.
So what this all means for you listening is that understanding this neuroscience isn't just, interesting theoretical knowledge. It helps explain why you might have those automatic reactions that sometimes feel way out of proportion.
Yeah, it gives a reason for them.
And maybe more importantly, it offers a tangible, practical way to start changing them. This dragon trial exercise is like a conscious tool for using your brain's own natural ability to build new, more balanced connections.
It really provides a path to move forward. It enables you to respond to the present moment with the wisdom gained from the full picture of past experiences, rather than just reacting from old, protective programming based on incomplete information.
So let's sort of recap. We've seen how the brain forms these strong pathways based on past painful experiences, holding on to an emotional charge that often comes from a perceived imbalance, basically, seeing the pain but overlooking the gain.
Right, focusing only on the negative side initially.
But the incredible capacity for neuroplasticity, which our sources really highlight, means we can actively seek out that balancing benefit. We can consciously help rewire our own responses.
It offers such a profound perspective shift, doesn't it? on our past and our potential for change.
It really does. So here's a final thought to leave you with. If our judgments and automatic reactions are often just these mental echoes of past unintegrated experiences where maybe we only processed half the picture, what new possibilities emerge when we consciously integrate the full story?
When we find and acknowledge the lessons and benefits that also occurred.
Yeah. When we allow our brain to see the full spectrum of reality, so it's no longer just screaming danger at every echo. What would it truly mean to walk freely into the future, no longer held back by those walls of memory? Something to consider until our next deep dive.